Welcome to Partners in Ministry. I'm your host, Dan Smith, and today I'll be joined by Diana Christiansen. Diana is the business manager for Beauty Amidst the Ashes in Newell, Iowa. Welcome, Diana, and thanks for joining me.
Hi, Dan. Thank you so much for having me today.
You bet. Hey, to get things started, why don't you just give us a brief history of Beauty Amidst the Ashes?
Sure. Okay. Be happy to. So Beauty Amidst the Ashes is a nonprofit that started in 2013. And our son, Christiansen, is the founder, and he now serves as the executive director of the organization. The organization really, the ministry started out of his personal story of adoption. And so as a family, our story included infertility and foster care and adoption. And so in 2013, Carl had been on staff at Youth with a Mission in Denver. And he then at that time decided and made a decision to move back to Iowa. And through a process with his birth mom and some other family members, really started to explore the idea of working with families that were connected to adoption and foster care. And so out of that, and also part of his personal heritage that came from his birth parents, and really a calling to ministry. Out of that came the organization.
It's awesome. That is awesome. So what types of services do you provide the kids and the parents?
Primarily, we try to operate under, we call them our 4 pillars. And so we do different types of programs and services that come under 4 types of categories. We advocate, we educate, we equip, and we support. And so underneath of those pillars, we have developed several programs, one of which is our adoption grant program. And so we have a adoption grant. Every year we have 3 application periods. And then at the end of each application period, our selection committee then selects recipient families to receive grants to help with the cost of their adoption. And those range from $2,000 to $6,000 for grants. And then we do education. Our biggest education service that we provide is the HOPE Conference. And we started that in 2014. And so it's an annual conference in Des Moines for families connected to adoption, to foster care. And we not only are serving the families, but also the churches and communities and professionals that work with these families. And so that just finished up for us this year in November here of 25. And then we, under Equip, we do different services for families and kids that are in care here in Iowa. And one of our large projects is our bike drive. This will be our 4th annual bike drive coming up in 26. And in 25, we were able to purchase through donations from generous donors. We were able to provide 370 new bikes for kids that were currently in care. And so we delivered bikes to 7 different locations around the state that year. It started out, and we still call it 100 bikes for 100 kids. But the first year we thought, hey, this would be great, get to 100. Well, we obviously were not meeting the need. And so we wanted to double that in year 2, but we quickly came to the realization that we wanted to try to meet the need, not just set our own goal, how many, bikes to be able to try to be able to purchase, but we wanted to meet the need. So kids register now for the bikes, and that way we're able to purchase specific bikes for the size and the age of the kids and care. And so we'll be continuing that. And we work with 4 Oaks here in Iowa in the different service areas for foster care for that. And so then in addition, we are also, this year we have expanded to work with another way to help the kids in care and the families is through our suitcase bundles and our first night bags. And we've collaborated this year with Focus on the Family from Colorado Springs. and they provided for us nice 30-inch duffel bags, and included with that is a teddy bear and then a Bible. There's two options for a youth Bible or a teen Bible. And so we are distributing those through different events and locations for kids currently in care here in Iowa. And then in addition to that, we have decided to work with expanding those, and we are adding to those bags essential items and things that can provide the necessities, but also just some comfort items and help that transition that is so difficult for kids when they are placed in different homes. And so we are working on that, and that's another way we're providing support for families and kids here in Iowa and beyond.
Well, I know when we were talking earlier, you mentioned something about a year-end project called the Hope Project. What is that?
Absolutely. Probably, I don't know how many years ago, we decided that every year, starting after Thanksgiving, we kind of coordinated with Giving Tuesday, but then we include it all the way to the end of the year. So through December, we run a project called the Hope Project. And that is our fundraising for the end of the year. And over the years, that primarily was money we raised to help fund our adoption grant program. And it's a great time what we've done is we have featured some of our adoption grant recipient families. And so some of them, send us updates about their family, about just how receiving our grant has been a blessing, made a difference for them in their journey. And so it's a great way to do several things. It really shows our donors, where their gift is going, gives them an opportunity to actually see the families and hear from them. And so we feature those families during the month while we're raising the funds to help with that. And so this year, in addition to the adoption grant program, we are raising funds during our Hope Project for our first night bags. So even though the bags were donated to us through Focus on the Family and their donors, we are purchasing, Beauty Amidst the Ashes is purchasing the items that we're adding to that, such as, clothing, pajamas, underwear, personal care items for these kids and comfort items. And so we're using money from the Hope Project to also fund those first night bags. And those will be then placed with kids when they're removed from their home and placed in a foster home. They'll be made age specific in categories so that it's giving them something that helps that transition.
Sure.
And so our goal this year for our Hope Project is $30,000. And so we have big goals. We want, to see what God brings along, but we are looking for donations for that during the month of December.
Well, let's talk just a little bit more about the two specifics, the grants and the first night bag. So let's go back to the grants for a little bit. How do these grants help your adoptive parents? What are some ways that the money that they apply for can help them?
Absolutely. When the families receive a grant and they are applying for our grant, they are in the process of adopting. So they are working with an agency or they're working with an attorney. And so as part of the application that they send, I know they have to, it's a little bit of work. They have to put together an application like most grants are, and they send that application to us. When we select the families, we look at several things. We're looking at families that where their need is. No matter where you are financially as a family, adoption is expensive. But we take into consideration, our selection committee looks at what the financial need is and what their specific, status is, their process, how it's going, what their need is. And then obviously we can't select everybody. We can't select all the eligible families, but the ones we select, the money then that they receive from our grant is paid directly to the adoption agency that they are working with. And so it's used to pay for some of the expenses that they have as a family to help them cover that. And so obviously, financial barrier of adoption is a limiting and really a burden. And also it's an overwhelming thing for, families. Often families that begin the process for adoption, they're totally trusting God for how he's going to provide. And they work hard, they have their own fundraisers, they save, they use their own, savings, they apply for grants and they pray. And, God often, uses lots of different ways to help provide that. But from our families that we have either had apply or that we've selected as recipients, we have so much feedback that comes back to us showing just how, number one, it's a huge encouragement. Sure. Because, just to get that know that, hey, they're not alone in this process. They're doing something that is a big step of faith and they're encouraged. But number two, it's obviously helping with the actual need that they have financially to help cover that. And most families, I'm sure we know not all, but most families that are adopting are looking for ways to help fund that. So they are looking for grants like ours, and they often apply for multiple grants, and places where they can qualify and be able to receive a grant. So, but once they've been selected, these families really become part of our Beauty Amidst the Ashes family. And they have then found encouragement, support, and also connection. So one thing that's exciting, Dan, is that some of our families that have been grant recipients, then they sometimes connect with another family that's also doing the same thing. And we all know that that's beneficial. That's making an impact, and it goes forward. So we don't just give them a grant and then, that's it. We try to stay connected to our families. We have a specific group that they can be a part of, that they can, connect with others. We invite them to our events we have. Sometimes we have them share their story at like our Hope Conference. Sure. In November. We invite them to our fundraising event called Never Alone that we started in 2024 with Wildwood Collective. And at that event especially, we honor some of our families and really show our donors, these are the families that have been receiving, the grants and the donations. And so it really is a great way to not only help with the financial need, but then going forward, it's a connecting group for these families.
What's the typical cost of adoption these days?
It's high. I would say from what we're still seeing on applications, it's ranging from $30,000 to $50,000. Some higher, some lower, but I would say most of them are in the range from 30 to 50.
Wow. So who is it that can qualify for these grants?
In our particular grant qualification, all of our grant qualifications is obviously on our website, and it's a very simple process to go through and look at it. But just to give you an idea, you have to be a U.S. citizen to qualify for a grant. And then you have to have a current home study. So you have to have that part of the process has to be done. So our grants are not for somebody that's just thinking about beginning the process. The families that apply, they're actually in process. They're working with an agency or an adoption consultant, or an attorney. They've done their home study. They're a U.S. citizen, and then we do have a combined income cap. So we, know that, like I said earlier, no matter what your income is, people face, some financial expenses. And also, like, some people adopt sibling groups and there's extra expense, for that. If it's an international adoption, there's more travel involved and more expense like that. So we know it varies, but we have a combined income maximum that families have to qualify under. And so they have to submit some financial information. And then we have the families include what's the reason they're looking to adopt, what's their parenting philosophy, and then also this a testimony, something about their testimony. And so we get to know the families with their application because they really share about who they are. A lot of these families, Dan, have maybe gone through the process before. Maybe this isn't their first adoption. Some of them it is. But then also some of them have spent money in an adoption process. And then maybe for some reason that adoption did not happen. And then the money that they had spent, they may, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't get to apply that to continuing the process. So, and a lot of people have had maybe some medical issues if they've adopted previously, and they've had maybe some special need kids in their family where they've had extra expenses for medical or treatment or some type of therapy. They've had extra expenses. And so those are all things they tell us about themselves, and we get to know them in the application process.
Sure. So if I'm in that process of making the commitment, I'm starting the process of going through adoption, and I'm really interested in some of the services as well as the granting process that you do, what would be my first step to get connected with you guys?
On our website, you can read all the information that I've shared today, but there's a very simple drop down that has our adoption grant there, and clicking on that opens up the application, and it's very laid out, very user friendly. There's a front page 1 that has just basic demographics and a lot of general information. And then there is another page in the application that tells exactly, the steps that they have to follow, where to send it. And then we do also request references. Families have to submit a reference from their agency, a personal reference, and then some type of a pastor or a ministry, Bible study leader or something reference. And so they can follow the process there, and then it's very clearly laid out where to send the application. And then we have a notification process that we use. So when we receive the applications, we do email notifications letting people know it's been received. If there's anything that we're waiting on, like if we're waiting on a reference, and then when it's completed, we notify and they let them know it's in review. And then when we are finished and the application period ends, and there's a postmark date at the end of each 4-month period, when we have our selection committee review and make decisions, we notify every family. So if a family receives a grant from us, if they're selected, they're notified that they were selected. If they were not selected, we let them know we send a letter to notify them, because we really want to honor these families that apply. They've gone to a lot of work, to submit the application, and they're in a process that's very important to them. And we work really hard to, make sure that we are letting them know. And sometimes families, if they're not selected, they reapply. We tell families our grants are just limited by obviously the number of applicants, and then also just the available funds that we have, because during each 4-month period of application, whatever our donations are that are directed to our grant program are given during that time, we give all of that away each time. So we, it's 100% of it goes to the grants. And so we want our families to be well informed on that. And then once we've selected them, then we continue the process and we contact the families to complete the communication between them and their agency. And the grant money is given directly to their agency for their account.
Okay. All right. So the first part of the whole project, it has to do with the grants, and it's a funding stream to provide the funds that are necessary for you in order to be able to make the grants to adoptive parents. The second
Right.
thing that you mentioned are these first night bags.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit again what's in them and why they're important. What role are they playing in the whole process with
Okay.
foster?
Absolutely. I would say they're playing a vital role. One of the most common things that, even if you're not really familiar with foster care, one of the most common things that a lot of people are aware of is that it is not unusual for a child just to be moved around, maybe to the initial placement, and then maybe multiple times moved to different places with like a black trash bag, with their few belongings in. And, you hear stories, that's true, and that's not unusual. Oftentimes they are coming with very little. And so knowing that, there's the need, but also it's a very valuable piece of, what happens to these kids, because they are removed from everything that's familiar to them. Even though it's been hard, and even though it's been trauma, and even though it's been, harmful, it's all they know, and so they're removed, and that creates obviously fear, anxiety, insecurity, for sadness, for the kids. And just because of the logistics of having to be moved, like that and taken away, they're often not only leaving their home and their parents, even though maybe they're in a very hard situation, they're leaving their communities often, they're leaving their church, they're leaving their schools, their friends, other family members. Everything, becomes hard. So when these kids are transitioned like that, having something that belongs to them, that they can hang on to, take with them, that not only has some things in there that they need, but also it gives them a feeling of, value and
Sure.
worth. So the things contained in the bag serve the purpose of meeting essential needs like underwear,
Sure.
pajamas to put on, socks, clothing, the personal care items, but also we include some type of comfort items, something to make them know that somebody cares about them. It helps to give them some type of comfort. And so in addition to that, through Focus on the Family and their donations to us through the Suitcase Bundle program, we have the Bibles. So obviously not every family or not every child is going to take or even look at that Bible, but we do know that it is an opportunity for these kids to that may be the only Bible they ever have seen so far or have an opportunity to see in their young lives. And so it is a way for God's Word to be available to them, and for them to have, something that belongs to them and a Bible for them. And so when they then receive those bags, we know for a fact that they are meeting a lot of needs, and very important. In addition to the kids, think about the families that are the licensed foster care families. They have a heart for what they're doing. They are serving these kids. They are showing up, day after day, doing the hands-on care and, loving the kids. Well, it's also, these bags are also helping them, because,
Sure.
if a family that is fostering, if they receive, a call saying there's a child that needs, a home, and if they agree to that, sometimes they have what they need for a child that age, and sometimes they maybe don't. And so then
Sure.
they have to get those things, and sometimes there's different ways to, like closets, foster care closets, or if they go to the store and buy it, whatever. But if the child comes with that, right away you're offering support. So one of our goals is, we want to see these families that are serving as foster care families, we want to see them staying with it. We want to see them, we want to help sustain them. And support them and wrap around so that they know they are not alone in this. And so it's another beautiful way to do that and to meet those needs and provide that support and encouragement for the families also. And so with our Hope Project, the money will be divided between our grants, which I talked about first, and then with these bags. And what we're purchasing is the things that we add to the bags.
Sure.
So,
But about how many bags do you distribute in a typical year?
this is our first year for doing the first night bags.
Okay.
So we received this year 2,000 of the suitcase bundles from Focus on the Family. And so we've had several events where we had a tailgate party in the summer, and we have events so that the kids and their families can come. And then we've given the bags to kids that are already in care. And then we're sharing the bags also with another organization on the eastern part of the state called My Gear. And they've been doing first night bags for a while. And so the goal for the bags with us and collaborating with Focus on the Family was that we would help meet the needs, here in Iowa. So we are sharing, those bags with some families. And then we, like I said, this is our first year then for Beauty Amidst the Ashes to begin to build the program here with adding to the bags, building them into first night bags, and having those available for kids when they transition. And so we are currently really just working to grow that and develop that program so that we can meet needs.
Sure. What's your estimate about what it's going to cost to fill one of those bags? So let's say I was interested in helping out with that. I mean, what would I need to donate in order to probably help you fill one of those bags?
Absolutely. We just give an example. We recently did one for a newborn, and we were notified of a family that they were new in foster care and they had a newborn. And so for that bag, we spent about $200 because we supplied formula, diapers, clothing, all the needs like that. So some of them would be specific and would be that much. But I would say that each bag is going to probably contain anywhere between $100, $150 or more dollars, depending on the age of the kids.
Sure.
It'll go higher, but our goal is to provide at least, pajamas, underwear, socks, at least one clothing, set of clothing, maybe more depending on the need. And then the toiletries and the things like that. In addition, the personal care items that they will receive. And so for the older kids, obviously a little bit higher number on that. So, I would say that would be at least 100, 150 would be the bottom line, and it would probably go up from there.
If I wanted to make a donation to Project Hope, what are some ways that I can do that?
Absolutely. So on our social media, Facebook and Instagram, there are lots of posts about the Hope Project, and the link is there to go directly to our giving page. And it's very simple from there to make the donation to the Hope Project. If you go to our website, there's also the ability to donate there, and we have a general giving page, and you can select the Hope Project for your donation. And so in addition to that, we have, obviously, we've sent out lots of emails and notification to anybody that's ever attended our conference over the years has received, the QR code that's on there available for that. So, but the best way and the easiest way probably for people to remember is either our website or straight to our social media and our post there.
Sure. Well, finally, how can we pray for both you and Beauty Amidst the Ashes this week?
Well, first of all, Dan, thank you. I mean, Quakerdale has a foundation is always a support and encouragement for our organization. And so we're thankful for that. And we are so thankful for the prayer support. But we would ask for prayer for us to during this month of December, be able to reach the donors and the audience that care about kids, that have an interest in making a clear opportunity for kids to hear about the gospel. And so I would say, pray that God would just supply the needs that we have in front of us in order to make it possible.
Yeah. Well, Diana, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time to let us know a little bit about you, about Beauty Amidst the Ashes, and how we can be a part of it. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you guys.
Hey, if you have any questions or if you'd like to learn more about Beauty Amidst the Ashes, you can see their contact information here on the screen. You can also find it in the show notes for this episode on our website, as well as in the YouTube description. If you'd like to support Beauty Amidst the Ashes financially, you can find links to do so both in the show notes as well as the YouTube description. Finally, please consider sending Diana and Beauty Amidst the Ashes an email of encouragement. Let them know that you're thinking about them and praying for them this week. So on behalf of Beauty Amidst the Ashes, Diana Christiansen, and Partners in Ministry, I want to thank you for joining us today. And until next time, let's get out there and serve as Christ serves.